Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain, and I want to welcome you to this webinar presentation on how to effectively manage the cost of supply chain disruptions, presented by Alithya. One quick housekeeping note before we get started. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can, time permitted. First of all, though, a little bit about Alithya. Alithya delivers ERP, CRM, BI, and digital solutions to empower manufacturers to better control and maximize assets, minimize operating costs, meet regulatory requirements, and fuel global expansion. They help discrete manufacturers overcome challenges associated with fluctuating demand, low-cost competition, pricing pressures, and volatile raw material markets. They aid food and beverage manufacturers in monitoring the impact of decisions on orders, production, inventory, and distribution. Their solutions also help manufacturers in the life science, pharmaceutical, and medical device manufacturing industries to manage cost pressures, generic competition, shelf life constraints, and strict regulatory and GMP requirements around manufacturing and product approvals based on potency and more. Alithya enables commodity, industrial, specialty, and agricultural chemical manufacturers to make data-driven decisions on orders, production, inventory, and distribution. They also address deeper industry-specific challenges like batch order balancing, lot characteristics inheritance, scheduling, formula management, managing purchase prices based on potency, and more. So with that, I'd like to introduce our great speakers for today's presentations. Steve Reed is Vice President Sales at Alithya. Steve has a broad range of experience helping application software companies successfully develop and bring manufacturing and enterprise solutions to market. He has over 20 years of experience in software and is dedicated to the success of businesses' digital transformation journey. Ryan Casey is Vice President Dynamics at Alithya. Ryan loves technologies that help companies better connect with their customers and helps lead Alithya's customer-centric technology practice. His areas of industry knowledge include manufacturing and professional services. Arvind Sahu is Head of Information Technology at Carryout. As the technology hands-on leader, Arvind is leading the initiative to rebuild the IT organization as a true business partner and strategic business differentiator. He focuses on creating a robust technology platform that enables companies to achieve corporate targets and maintain their pole position. So with that, I want to talk to Arvind for a few minutes, and perhaps, Arvind, you could introduce us to Carryout. Tell us about the company, would you please?
Sure. Hey, thanks everyone. Talking about Carryout. So Carryout is a family-owned company. It was founded in 1964, and it has over 50 years of diversified manufacturing experience, primarily in the to-go food packaging business in the US. It employs over 400 people full-time and about 1,500 folks if we count in the temporary workers who work in the different locations throughout the country. It is actually a proud recipient of the American Institute of Bakers' highest quality of standard, which is superior and in regards to our manufacturing processes. It operates out of 6 facilities throughout North America with nearly 1 million square feet of production and distribution, supplying both independent and national food service distributors.
57 years in business, you must have seen all kinds of different conditions come and go. But what is the current business climate for Carryout, Arvind?
It is challenging as it is for everyone else, but the challenges are a little different from, say, some of the other folks or some of the other industries, in the sense that last year has been a phenomenal year for us, and that's primarily because of the increase in the to-go restaurant services. And since we are the primary suppliers for the to-go products, so we did I would say, much better than we had anticipated. So that in itself presented a lot of challenges, in the sense that though the demand was at an all-time high, our supply chain was not able to cope up with that. And there were a couple of challenges there. So primarily some of it to do with our suppliers itself, and some of it with how much we could produce. So it was totally unanticipated in that respect, but we did actually exceed our expectations last year. So, so
Well,
different
how,
business opportunities.
like so many, like everyone else who has any dependence on China whatsoever, I'm sure you have been affected by the current situation. How did supplies from China specifically affect you?
Yeah, it was pretty bad in the sense that actually when the COVID hit us last year, um, like what we saw was an immediate fall down in our business. We actually, for the first 2 months, we fell down by about 75% of our target for those months. And that was just because people just stopped going outside. And after that, it suddenly peaked. But the problem was from China, because of the supply chain lines congestions, we were having much more lead times than anticipated. And even now, what is happening is there is a fourfold increase in our freight costs from China. And that has its own challenges in terms of how much of those costs can we pass on to the customers and whatnot. So something we are grappling with, and something which Alithya will help us figure out with this new ERP system we are putting in place. So.
What about labor challenges and the resulting machine downtime that comes from that? Have you been struck by that, like so many companies?
Yes, we did in some respects, in the sense that our factories actually never closed down. We were part of the essential services as categorized by the US government, so we were able to operate throughout the pandemic. So we didn't have downtimes in the sense that we had to bring the machines down or anything. It was more sort of labor challenges which we faced because people didn't want to come to the factories, or people falling sick and whatnot. But we didn't really have any significant downtime on our equipment itself, because we had built-in contingency workers to come and run them when the
Yeah.
main workers were out. So.
I'm assuming that your current enterprise resource planning, your ERP system, solves all your problems, right?
Hopefully, yeah. But it does bring us to the next level where we want to be, and it will help us scale up to the demands and demands of our customers, and provide better customer or superior customer service. So that's what
Yeah.
we are looking for.
Well, certainly you could hear the sarcasm in my voice when I asked that question. And certainly you were motivated to evaluate a number of technology tools in order to reach solutions to address your current situation. So how do you go about doing that? How do you evaluate tools that are right for you?
Yeah, so one of the primary challenges we had, and when we started off was, and this was much before even COVID hit us, was that we had been experiencing double-digit growth for the last 10 years. But what was not happening was the back-end systems were not really able to support that growth. And we had actually identified ERP as one of the primary sort of drawbacks which was holding us back. So that was always in the plan. And then we were also planning to build technologies around the core ERP system itself, which will actually give us the business differentiator we have from, say, other industries. So we looked at potentially, I would say about when I started, about three ERP systems. So we actually started with 6, then we whittled down to 3. And out of those 3, based on various parameters, which included like ease of user experience, and then ease of maintenance, and then also cost is a big component of that, and the support which we can provide, and the support we can get from resources. So those were some of the primary criteria. So we actually went through I would say, a pretty elaborate evaluation process of the ERP systems. We had the different vendors come in and present. So the product vendors, which is like SAP and Microsoft Dynamics and NetSuite, they were the final 3. And then we also had the various partners come in and present, Alithya being one of them. And we went through a rating process, and based on the ratings which we got from our users and our senior business leaders, we shortlisted Dynamics 365 and Alithya as the 2 final.
Let me get a perspective from our Alithya panelists. I want to start with you, Ryan, and ask you just to sort of detail for me what process improvements you've seen out there or in the process of being implemented. Can you give me a picture of kind of the current state of things?
Yeah, sure. All of us are in the middle link of a long chain, right? We have vendors and suppliers on one side, we've got customers and clients on the other, and we're there trying to do well in the middle. What I see companies, including carryout, focused on is getting better data from their customers, better insights into what do customers need, what volumes, at what time. With that, you can manage both that middle chain that we're all responsible for and so much of what's coming upstream on the supply side. Carryout's doing a lot of interesting things, and you'll hear more, I think, from Arvind as we go through today, including using predictive analytics to try to better forecast, using CRM tools to better connect with customers and understand what's coming from them and when. A simple example from another customer. It's surprising how simple this thing is, but they added a change so that when customers place orders, they simply ask, what is the ideal date to receive this order? And what they learned is not every customer needs or wants things ASAP. And by just having that simple insight, they can, as you can imagine, do a lot of planning with limited resources. That's been a big change for them.
Yeah. Steve Reed, what's your perspective on some of these new process improvements and what's being implemented out there in the world today?
Yeah, Bob, thank you. I agree with what Ryan said, and as we see customers focused on that, I think the other element that of the mix that I see that comes into play, you actually referred to it in your question earlier, but around the people side. You know, so you've got products, processes, and people, that triple piece there that comes into play. And so as we do have some of our customers, unlike at carryout, but some of our customers, they have had issues around having the people in place, you know, when they do have the supplies, being able to have the people in place. And so just making sure that from a training standpoint, because at times there were people, but they didn't necessarily have the right skill sets, or they didn't have that cross-functional knowledge that becomes so important. And so having a focus on not only on how do we make our processes better, how do we evolve and use better products or better tools and tool sets, but ultimately those tool sets can be incredible, but if we don't have the right people, and if those people aren't trained in how to use those products and to follow the processes, then it all sits idle. And so that's really key, you know, for all aspects of it.
I want to drill down more into some specific technologies that we're talking about here today, and I know that they've already been alluded to some extent. But Arvind, tell me about how you folks have adopted and embraced machine learning. How have you accomplished it, and what are some of the aspects of machine learning that have been of particular value to carryout?
Yeah, so as Ryan was mentioning, predictive analysis is something which we were sorely lacking at carryout, in the sense that we were doing our demand forecasting primarily using Excel spreadsheets, which was not the best way to do it. So we did put in machine learning to help us do that. And it has provided us at a broad level what we wanted in terms of giving us forecasts which we can rely on to later drive the downstream processes like inventory management or production management and whatnot. So, and we have actually, we are doing the machine learning to do predictive analysis for all our SKUs, which is something which we were never able to do in the past. So it will certainly change the way we do business right now, so we can better anticipate demands and better service.
But you can't analyze anything unless you have data. And one of the great sources of data these days is the Internet of Things, IoT. Has that been instrumental in your success of these tools?
Yeah. So apart from machine learning, which we are using primarily for demand forecasting, we are also using IoT to actually read the performance of our machinery and equipment. So what we are doing is we want to make sure, like you mentioned prior to that, is what are the downtimes we are having on our machinery, what are the OE, what is the machine which is running most efficiently, and where are we seeing the deficiencies? How can we schedule things around so that we have the most productive use of our equipment? So those are some of the things which we never had insights into. And having IoT in place and putting sensors on our equipment and reading that data in real time and giving us dashboards which we can analyze and look at it in a pictorial manner gives the visibility we need to take immediate action. So,
yeah. Ryan, give me your perspective on the applicability and use of various technologies such as machine learning. And we just talked about IoT and, for that matter, BI, business intelligence. Can you give me some view on that?
Sometimes things like machine learning and artificial intelligence seem so abstract and science fiction. Most companies, though, when they're doing these forecasts, Arvind mentioned using Excel, they'll grab, what did I do last year? They'll put some assumption, I'm going to do 5% more or 10% less. And that's their forecast. You can basically lease predictive models from Microsoft and other vendors through which you can run your last year or last year's worth of actual performance. And those models can predict outcomes. You can test those models even if you were to use 2015 through 2017 and say, well, predict what my 2018 would have been. You can compare, and we did this at Carryout, then compare that against your actuals in 2018 to gauge, are these models more accurate than those old Excel forecasts that I had done for 2018? Use any combination of years of actuals to compare those things. And you'll find that in cases where you have enough volume, and that's key. By volume, I mean, if it's a new product with 6 months of history, it's hard to use that data to predict. But if you have 3 years of a high volume item or a high volume customer, you can get very accurate predictions, much more so and more granular than the old Excel add 5% thing. And these predictions are at an item or a customer or even a ship to level. It can be very granular. So if you take that and then combine that with taking that raw data, put that in front of your customers and validate. An account manager can know when sharing that kind of data, when a customer says, oh, we're about to expand and add a new line, or we're going to be shutting down this facility. Those insights are really valuable. And I see a lot of companies don't take the time to go out to their customers who are having the same supply chain challenges we are, and they're trying to get more predictability themselves, so they're more apt to share and be transparent than ever. You can get some great insights. You then apply those on top of what those predictive models have given you. You're still going to do some Excel analysis along the way, but you can get way more accurate. So that's on the predictive modeling side. It's very practical and not science fiction. And then just quickly on the IoT component. So this is more on our operational efficiency with the one link that I'm responsible for, my processes. How much efficiency can I squeeze out of those? And we have some companies who are not yet hitting a 50% operational efficiency. They have a lot of downtime, unplanned. And IoT is one component to help sharpen that up. So if I could run that same plant or that same line at 75% efficiency by being proactive and planning and managing downtime proactively, that's a 25% boost in throughput, obviously. So we're seeing those things very practically, tangibly play out at Carryout and other customers. And it isn't science fiction. It's real stuff that manufacturers are really doing.
Yeah, Steve, what Ryan is just talking about just seems unprecedented on two fronts, both on the technology side and the business process side, because as he says, you need to have the technology and you have to share the information. So are you seeing real progress on both of those fronts based on the technology we're talking about today on all this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. We are seeing customers that are taking advantage of that type of technology, being able to help their business. The other thing, and Ryan alluded to this, it's taking that next step. It's not only to look at it within your four walls of your company, but it's then going out and it's that second step of validating with your customers, and to get their feedback. And it's creating, I think, some side benefit, because you do often where you create more. It's more of a strategic relationship with your customer, not just a transactional relationship. And so creating that relationship that where they're looking to you now, not just as a supplier, but they're looking to you that as you have insight of supply chain disruption, are there other things they can do? How can you help them as they're making their plans? How are you able to help them? And so there's that ongoing, it's an ongoing continuous loop. It's not just, hey, we do this one thing, it goes in one direction and we stop. But it actually, when you look at it, you're now going into more of a model that says, hey, we're gonna analyze, we're gonna plan, we're gonna respond, we're gonna collaborate. But then that added motion of the sense, sensing what's taking place in the marketplace, some things that we can see, but maybe not to the depth of the impact of our business or our customer's business. When you put all of those pieces together and have that communicating, then that's where you're really starting to get traction in this area.
Yeah, yeah. Arvin, when we talk about the traditional method of developing a forecast, well, you look at what happened before, what happened last year, the last 2 years, and then you translate that into what's going to happen the next year. Your Carryout and all other companies doing that in 2019 would not have had much luck in accurately figuring out what was going to happen in 2020. So the secret there becomes real-time data and the ability to collaborate. Is that what you've managed to do at Carryout?
I won't say we have been able to achieve that yet, but that's where we want to go. In the sense that from Excel going to a system which actually gives us a demand forecast at a customer level and at a location level, like a warehouse level, is really, really important. And we can actually make it happen, say, daily, on a daily basis if we need to. So it gives us that flexibility. So we are starting off with a monthly sort of forecast, but what machine learning is going to be able to provide us is, if we want, we can bring it down to a daily level, which is like really game changing for us. So it does provide us near real-time information, which is something we sorely lack. And just adding on to what Steve said, that's another important aspect for us is Steve was mentioning, the collaborative planning with our customers and our suppliers. So our customers, now we can show them based on their demand forecast and based on our demand forecast, what level of customer service we can provide. And that's also something we can share with our vendors. And that's something which ties it all around and gives us better visibility all around. So
yeah. Ryan, do you see real-time reporting affecting decision-making today?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Yes. I'll just go back again to that example of getting insights from your customer base. There's an old book that some of you might have read back in college if you went through an engineering school about the theory of constraints by Elion Goldratt. This is not a new book at all. And it's mostly about how to optimize a manufacturing process. But he also goes into how to use the same principles, manufacturing engineering-based principles, to optimize the supply chain. And he talks about working with customers to manage their expectations so that you can exceed them. And so by knowing real time, as I mentioned those simple examples before about customers who are growing or shrinking and factoring that into your plan, beyond knowing, you can then begin managing pricing and contracting along those same principles. If you can level out that demand, that gives you an incredible, not just set of data, it gives you a competitive advantage. I would really encourage going back to that old book, if any of you might have learned that before, or if you haven't before, A Theory of Constraints by Elion Goldratt. Apply that to your supply chain and get closer to your customers. So that isn't a sensor on a machine. That's a person talking to a person. But if you have account managers out in the field talking to accounts, and you can equip them with data, just forecast data, and you can collect back from them data around demand, that I consider that to be real time, and that to be a game-changing difference.
Yeah, no, Steve Goldratt was writing at a time when the idea of real-time information was probably just a dream for most companies. But what do you think, Steve? I mean, I'm really fascinated by this idea that both technology and people are required in order to enable true real-time decision-making and reporting. But you're telling us today that this is actually a reality.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And again, it just reinforces the aspect of the like Ryan was just saying, the people side of it, that people-to-people connection, and then being able to take that and to connect it together. And we do have, we're seeing our customers, and as they have that visibility with the data side, and again, things that sometimes it's very easy to see there's a direct link between a disruption in our supply chain, and then sometimes there's not. Sometimes there are disruptors that they're taking place in the world, but you don't necessarily know to the level and to the degree that they're impacting your business. And so I think that's where the modern technology, and having that, not only is it having the visibility of it, but it's that accessibility to it. And so, being able to real time have that data at hand that lets you know, hey, we need to shift our production schedule. And so now not only is it taking the information, but then it's then making the necessary adjustments to your planning, to your schedules, to meet your customer demand, but also to help adjust based on what materials you do have coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. Arvind, it seems like this is probably the case for carryout as well as all businesses today. In times of crisis like this, so much of what you do is firefighting, putting out the fires of the moment, dealing with the situation as it stands right now. What is carryout's long-term vision? What are you planning next?
Yeah, so what we want to be able to do is we want to double our business in the next 5 years. That's the overall sort of challenge that we have. And to do that, we want to put robust people process technology in place, which will help us achieve that. And so the groundwork has started right now, in the sense that we are putting together the technology pieces and putting together the processes around them, and then acquiring the right talent to run those processes and those technologies, which will help us get to our goal. So that's the long-term vision for us. And we are going to get there not only just by acquiring, but also organic growth. So those are the two pillars on which we will target our doubling our business in the next 5 years.
Certainly what could be described as a stretch goal, but it sounds entirely possible based on the types of technology we're talking about today that might enable that. Ryan, I'd be interested in knowing beyond carryout, what do you see in terms of what other companies are doing right now to manage their supply chains?
I'm going to speak again on the customer side of the chain, but to basically go one level deeper, the next step in the journey. So we talked about having a forecast through these other tools and carrying that out in front of a customer, getting their feedback. Having that to be a bit of a more integrated approach. So this isn't for every company at every maturity level and every size, but if I have either strategic vendors or strategic customers, they're more willing now than ever to share and collaborate on this. They have, again, the same challenges that we have, and they want them solved. They see us as a critical link in their chain, or to the extent they do, they're willing to work with us. So that comes down to sharing between customer and vendor, where we're both of those, both the customer and the vendor, but sharing this data, not just let's have a meeting and pull up our spreadsheets and talk and capture notes, but really sharing information, sharing production schedules in a digital format. And that's just the next iteration of the same principle, and just a more mature version of the same premise.
Yeah. Steve, what do you see out there in terms of what other companies are doing?
Yeah, it's around that. So, and as Ron was talking about from the customer side, I'm also seeing that to the supplier side. And so some of our customers, they're looking at how do they create a more strategic relationship with their suppliers, and not just looking at the supplier as a vendor, but again, it's really changing that approach. And it doesn't fit for every supplier that you have, but identifying those that really are key and establishing a different level of relationship with them. And so having, understanding the ones that that have been really good about working with you in the past, those that have that meet the schedules and the demands and that are willing to go the extra mile for you, working and building on those relationships to understand, hey, when product A isn't available, are there other options that are out there that maybe aren't that exact same spec, but they really are, they're close enough, and maybe they even exceed the specs that you have, allows you to have a better product that you're delivering to your customer. And so having that communication, again, I know we keep coming back to that, but I think it's an important element of what we're talking about today. So as we talk about data and we talk in terms of the digital and the digitization of our commerce, there's still that aspect of that human to human interaction. And that can be face to face. It can be in the same physical room. You know, it can also take place in virtual rooms, just like where we're meeting today. And being able to have that type of collaborative conversation and brainstorming and talking through challenges and business problems, and then working together to find those solutions. And so I know that's a very low tech answer, but that is part of what we're seeing is customers and suppliers working more in a collaborative manner.
There's so much talk about this idea of achieving one version of the truth, because up to now, all the different supply chain partners have had their own forecasts, their own data. They don't want to share. They're jealous of it. It's proprietary. They're afraid the competition will see it. So you're feeling that paradigm is breaking down in the face of these technological advancements and changes in attitude, Steve?
Yeah, look, there's still the secret sauce. That it's going to be the secret sauce, and every company has that, and they should protect it. They should understand where that boundary exists. But what I am seeing is that again, in those strategic relationships, customer to customer, vendor, supplier to customer, being able to create and to have that dialogue and to be willing to share that information, that it actually does open up additional avenues. It opens up new ideas that maybe you didn't think were possible. And part of it is that in solving, maybe we're trying to solve a problem to reduce our costs, and we achieve that. But in the midst of doing that, where I'm actually reducing my costs, I actually find out that I'm providing a better product and a better service to my customer. Well, that's even better.
Yeah, well, there's cost involved in service to the customer. It's not quite as easy to put a number on it sometimes. Arvin, do you feel like you at Carryout and your partners are more willing to share information that they might have jealously guarded in the past, based on what we're talking about here?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like Steve was mentioning, there are certain boundaries, but absolutely the sharing of information is much more seamless nowadays. And some of it, I think, is being enabled by the technologies themselves. We all want to do a good job. So at the end of it, the collaboration between the customers, the vendors, and suppliers like us is what will ultimately provide the customer level service that we want to provide. So it's a win-win situation for everyone.
I want to take a moment to reference specifically any potential innovations from Microsoft. And I think, Steve, maybe you can speak to this. What do you see out there right now from that particular vendor in the area that we're talking about here today?
Yeah, Bob, the things that I'm seeing from Microsoft, it has a lot to do with advanced scheduling. Definitely taking the aspects of exactly what we've talked about today. So taking and applying machine learning, taking what's taking place, not just within one area of the country or one country within a region, but really more of a global view, and bringing that aspect to those models, and then fine tuning that. It's that, it's not that the models are static; they're constantly being updated, and as factors change, the model changes as well, and so it's constantly being updated. So we see that. We see definitely more focus around the high volume, high velocity type aspects to it. Even things around better, faster, more accurate picking and inventory control. Again, that's a little bit to the boring side, but just often, being able to accurately know what you have on hand and where it's located, and being able to get it out the door and get it to the right customer. Those very basic elements become really important when we have other challenges that are outside the walls. Mm-hmm. And then, I mentioned before about that aspect of sense. We talked about IoT. Definitely Microsoft is very much looking at and investing in adding that IoT capability so that you do have that better indicator of, like Ryan said, whether it's a machine down that inhibits you from being able to produce. Maybe it's sensing when a machine that's at your customer's location that you've provided that it's having problem, or that it needs to be repaired before it does go down. So anticipating that, being ahead of that curve so that you don't have that unplanned downtime, those aspects are very real to where Microsoft is investing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In a larger sense here, we use the word prescriptive throughout this discussion, which of course is one step up from descriptive. But then the next step is prescriptive. And I wonder, Ryan, if you could tell me if you think that the AI and the ML machine learning capabilities are going to lead us into an area, if they haven't already, where the machines are actually telling us what to do and we're following their advice. Do you think that with regard to that, is that going to happen?
In some ways, I hope not, because it sounds a little terrifying. But that continuum will go forever and ever. Mm-hmm. And the constraint that these machines have today is the constraint we've always had. We have limited data to give them. I mentioned a new product or a product that's uncommonly sold. Statistics mm-hmm. can't predict what's going to happen now more than they could before. So these tools right now make statistical analysis much more attainable. And I think that's the chapter we're going to be in for a while, is better leveraging classical statistics and making those more accessible to us. When it comes to predicting decisions, I think we're a little ways from that. That'll get here someday. We'll all need new careers when that happens. So I hope it's a little while.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks guys for that. Those are some really great insights. I think it's time to turn to audience questions, and we do have some good ones out there. Even as we are answering them now, we still have time for audience members to continue to submit their questions by clicking on that Q&A button or icon at the bottom of your screen. But let me start with this one. Okay, listen. So it's a long one, but when the pandemic hit, everything came to a standstill. Since many of the raw materials are coming from China, and when everything started to open gradually, many companies might have experienced longer lead times. So how did the companies that experienced increase in lead times troubleshoot this problem? And how would someone who's in this field for such a long time would recommend a solution to lower the lead time? I'm going to just throw that out and see who wants to grab it first. What do you guys think? Lead time question.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
So I'll take a stab at it. I don't have the perfect answer, but I do know that focusing on production alone isn't the answer. In fact, my answer here is going to sound a bit repetitious, but I will stress again the importance of doing this, like climbing your way out of that hole in a customer-centric way. And you're going to have to make some priority decisions. And that might be based on the strategic nature of customer A versus the transactional nature of customer B, or the volumes or pricing or a lot of things. But I see a lot of companies not consider the customer as central to their strategy on getting out of this hole. And they think, I need to buy more materials and build more widgets and put them on the shelves. And it's someone else that's thinking about the customer. It's got to be customer centric. And Bob, you mentioned before, we're in this mode of firefighting. That old matrix of urgent versus important. What's important is to have a strategy on this. And the urgency of fulfilling orders or getting supplies into the building, we've got to tend to that fire. we don't have to put it out as much as we need to have a strategy for how to, in my view, work our way through this in a customer-centric way.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another question. So considering the disruptions that hit a supply chain during a black swan event, it can be argued whether it was black or white, I don't know. What do you think what do you think is better, having a responsive supply chain or having an efficient supply chain?
So, okay, I will take a stab at that. So one of the things which we did learn from the pandemic situation, which we were in, and like I said, our demands escalated, but our supply chain was a big bottleneck. So one of the realizations which came was we should diversify our suppliers, right? So it should not be just China and like a few vendors. It should be global in nature, and we should be able to say quickly switch over from one supplier to the other if such a situation comes up again. So those are some of the learnings from our supply chain operations that we are going to take forward.
So that to me sounds like responsive over efficient.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ryan? Do you agree?
Well, the definition of black swan is the unpredictability of it. So
Well,
if
it's also
we had
the once in a
hindsight,
lifetime event, the event that once every 100 years and so.
exactly. So if we, in hindsight, we would have all probably picked responsive for this unprecedented event. For the next one, I don't know.
Yeah. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think it's the thing about 2019. It wasn't just, I've talked to a couple of our customers. They weren't just dealing with COVID and pandemic and getting materials. They dealt with what we talked about earlier. They had labor shortages. They had people who were out for weeks on end. And then on top of that, in both cases, they relied heavily on goods coming in through the Gulf of Mexico. And as it turned out that particular year, and I forget the exact number, but it was something like there were 29 named storms in the Gulf that disrupted traffic coming into the ports. One of our customers, they relied heavily on natural gas and natural gas production and oil production that was also shut down because of those 29 named storms that were in the Gulf. And so it's this that ongoing layering. It's not just, hey, I have one event and I'm dealing with one event. The magnitude was different in 2019, but it's being able to having that plan in place, having that approach. To me, is it more important to be efficient or responsive? It's yes, and it's having that adaptability and the flexibility, and then ultimately it comes down to, as an organization, are we gonna be customer centric? Because to me, going back to the original question, part of it is, and it's not the great answer, we never like to disappoint our customers, but it's communicating with them, and it's communicating on, here's what we can do, here's what we can get to you in that specified time. And then, as we heard earlier, sometimes there are time frames and we have demands that we're putting on ourselves that turn out not even to be an actual requirement. And so in talking with our customer, having that open line of communication, again, doesn't solve every problem, but it allows you to communicate and to have that relationship.
We've talked about customer-centric aspects more than once in this hour. And it leads me to wonder, obviously, every company will tell you that they're customer-centric, that they're focused on the customer, but of course, that's not always the case because there are other considerations like shareholders. So I wonder, and you guys might have addressed this a little bit, but I'd like you to delve a little deeper into it today. And that is, how do you, based on this question we're getting, how do you efficiently manage your customer expectations? Arvind, how do you deal with that? For the better or worse?
Yeah, I think Steve addressed parts of it, and so did Ryan. So it's working together with the customers to understand what is top priority for them. In terms of, for us, it was more like, what are the supplies without which they cannot live, like which is priority 1, which is priority 2, and which is priority 3. And then working to make sure that we give them what is priority 1 on a more timely and on a more urgent basis, say, compared to say priority 3. So setting the expectations, getting the priorities from them, and then working through that and making sure that we cater to the expectations that we have set with them. Those are the 3 items for us.
Brian, what do you think? Do you think this technology we're talking about today might enable a level of communication with a customer that would help to manage expectations and help customers understand when things are going right or wrong and just give you better customer relations overall?
I do. Yeah. I mean, maybe I think more indirectly than directly. So maybe our customers aren't engaging with our technology. They're engaging with our people who are equipped with this technology. But that question before about resilience over efficiency, we all chased efficiency for a long time. And then we were hit with the unexpected and are now all thinking maybe resilience and maybe diversification sounds good. Our customers are thinking the same things. And I expect many customers would much rather have predictability than promises. So everybody wants it yesterday, but if I can, in collaboration with them, tell them with 90-something% confidence when they're going to get it, I think that's what we're looking for from our vendors. I think that's what our customers want as well. Obviously, that requires technology to do so. So that's probably not direct customer-facing technology necessarily, but it is essential just the same.
Yeah. This is a question from the audience that is kind of focusing again on the efficiency versus resiliency question, but I think there's more to say about it. And the question is, what should companies focus on to achieve resilience in their supply chains? Maybe perhaps we could start out by defining resilience. I assume it's be the ability to withstand disruptions and to flourish in the face of disruptions and bad times and recover. If that is the case, give me some guidance, Arvind, on what you folks do in order to ensure that you actually have a resilient supply chain.
Yeah, so resiliency, like I mentioned, has different definitions. For us, it is to make sure that that our supply chain can withstand shocks. Mm-hmm. So technology plays a big part in that. So having technologies that we can collaboratively work with our suppliers and our customers is something which will provide us that in terms of there is no shocks or surprises coming up because we have visibility to our customers and to our vendors on what's really happening on the ground. So that all-round visibility is something which going forward, the new ERP technologies, the cloud platforms, the different other technologies we are adopting outside of the ERP system, which will give us visibility across the board, not only to us, but to our customers and vendors also.
But when you achieve that level of visibility, does it lead you to possibly transform and change your supply chain based on saying, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that we, for instance, were single sourcing here, or that we were limited geographically here, or that we have a supplier who isn't necessarily 100% reliable here? Does it lead to a rethinking of the very way your supply chain is set up?
Yeah, it does. And that's where I was coming from, is that the diversification is something which the pandemic really taught us, is that cannot rely on a few suppliers all the time to provide us what we need. And like you mentioned, our customers must be thinking the same way. We cannot rely on just carry out to suppliers what we need. But from our perspective, we want to make sure that we have that diversification and we have that knowledge sharing going across both our customers and our suppliers on a daily basis, if possible, to make sure that nothing like this happens again. And if it happens, then the expectations are being set. And the realistic expectations. So.
Ryan, do you have any specific advice on how to achieve resiliency based on everything we're talking about here today?
Assuming certain things about who your customers and vendors are, some of us can use the word partner instead. And we have strategic partnerships with certain vendors, and we're a partner for some companies and so on. If I have two vendors, one of them can give me this raw material a few cents per pound cheaper, but the other will give it to me with an SLA and guarantees. Last year or 2 years ago, we would have picked vendor one. We all did. I think we should become vendor two. Vendor two relies on vendor two type companies. So finding suppliers who are partners who can back us with SLAs, guarantees, and predictability enables us to take that same differentiation to market. If that's relevant in your market to differentiate in that way, and in most, I think it is, I think that's a sound strategy.
Steve, I'm also wondering about the issue of data. We've been talking about acquiring more data through the Internet of Things and then better analytics and the like. But to what degree do you believe that manufacturers are able to capitalize on data that's already in their systems that they could act on today?
Yeah, we're seeing, Bob, that's one of the key things that we're not even having to go out and to prompt customers around that. They're looking for that as as they enhance their business application systems, ERP, and areas beyond that, in sales and marketing. They're looking at, so great, now I'm producing a lot of data. Now, how do I capitalize on that? And how do I really turn that into a competitive advantage for just what the data that we have internally? And so it's bringing it, and I guess the other aspect that comes to mind is that it's rare, and I won't say never, but I'll say next to never, that you just have one system that's generating data. Yeah, you normally have your core ERP business application system. You have a couple of add-on systems. You have some industry-specific IP that maybe that somebody wrote for you that's sitting out there. So you've got data that's coming in from multiple places and multiple sources, and so it's bringing all of it together in a smart way so that you can have that one version of the truth that applies whether you're looking at hey, what type of training do we need to be providing to our employees so that we do have better coverage when we have challenges, to our production, to what our customers are buying, and not only who's the customer that buys the most from me, but where's my most profitable customer. Being able to harness and have that one version of truth is really key, and that's where we're seeing a lot of customers want to work with us and to work with different tool sets to help them accomplish that.
Thank you. We have time for one more question from the audience, and this is a good one because I think I'd like to hear from each of you. It's a good way to kind of position and frame everything we've been talking about today. So here is the question. I'm going to start with you, Arvind. If you could do one thing from what we've talked about today to improve your supply chain health, what would it be?
I couldn't point to a single thing, but alluding to what Steve was mentioning is getting that info. I would put it this way: so we have enough data, right? So we have data flowing in from all sources, from everywhere. So how to get information from that data, like meaningful, executable, actionable information, is what will make a difference for us going forward.
Ryan, your turn.
Yeah, I'll give you two quick things: a technology and a people. Technology, to further what Arvind and Steve said, I think predictive analytics is here and is something that can really practically help today. It's a great way to turn data into information. On the people side, if you're in a supply chain role and not talking to customers, talk to customers, whether that's in a high-tech way or a low-tech way. I think that's going to pay dividends towards becoming a little more customer-centric.
Steve, one thing.
One thing, collaboration. Collaboration with your customers, collaboration with your suppliers, being strategic, but having that collaboration mindset.
I love it that we spent this hour talking about both humans as much as we've talked about technology. I mean, for all the great advances we've seen, both with Alithya and other providers, none of it really works unless there are people standing behind it, willing to support it, make the right business process decisions, and really innovate their way of thinking, as well as their application of technology. And with that, I just want to thank so much our great panel today, Ryan Casey and Steve Reed of Alithya, Arvind Sahu of Carryout. You've given some great information today about what's out there in this area. There's a slide right there. If you want more questions, you can contact the company right there. There's your email address, and any questions that we did not get to today, I'm sure our great speakers would be more than happy to answer them offline. So with that, I also want to thank our audience for attending and asking such great questions, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks.
Thanks all.